It might help, Bruce, if you turn off your camera.
Is better.
Yeah, if you try and start again.
Services, service provider. Jumping in social enterprise and Kigali, and try to do it, find a solution that is serving in Kigali, do some research in order to.
Bruce, I'm really sorry. You're kind of cutting in and out, so it's quite hard to hear. Would it be worthwhile, John, sharing the slides to reduce the load on your bandwidth, so then you can talk and John can share slides? Would that be so? If you stop sharing and John starts, that might maybe address the problem. Sorry, Bruce. It's just we're only hearing every one in every 3 words, so it's really hard to follow. Apologies. So would you mind starting from slide 2? Yeah, if you could just start again from here, Bruce. Sorry about this. Its Teams is often quite heavy, I think.
I was saying Pit Vidura is a social enterprise in Kigali. Where we do the way it works is that we try to tailor our solution to depending on the customer that we have. Some research and keep learning from the process in order to improve the solution and increase our access. Lower the cost of our services. And we also, Pit Vidura is also a live lab where we collaborate with other services in order to and we also better serve them. Next. Yeah, so for those who don't know where Kigali is the capital city of Rwanda. It's 1.7 million population. Around 70% of them live in settlement. In Kigali, 90% of the population use sanitation, which is Pit-Latrine septic tank. Kigali has a landscape which is difficult because it has valley and hills. Due to them that Kigali has of its, like the country has of its country of 1,000 hills, kind of have a landscape. Next. Okay, so the way Pit Vidura, what we have achieved since we started in 2015, up to today, we have 5,000 facilities. We managed to help 7 manual MTRs to transition from being informed, hygienic, and unsafe sanitation, and join the company, and now they are working normally and gaining a stable income. Up to date, we have moved around 40 million liters of waste from the community and to dump them at the dump site. And currently, we are able to serve 100 and more customers per month. Those customers, 45% are coming from low-income household. Next. So how do we serve the customers? So we have different processes that we follow to deliver our services. At the beginning, we established the marketing channels that will us market our products and be able to get more customers. So we have this sort of local shops that are branded our logo and our number. You know, they have a social media platforms where we have a sales agent, people who get for our services. There's also PTMTRs to market services and flyers and other marketing channels. Once a customer needs the services and finds our contact, they call our call center, and our call center can ask them like information on the type of the pit they want to serve and inform them like all the services we provide, the types of the code we use, the volume that we can empty, and our prices as well. If the customer accepts services, we send someone to go and evaluate the pit so that we can know which method we are going to use. If the pit contains the trash, if there is a road that gets to the customer, and other details necessary to in order to service. Once we know those information, then we plan and we send the exhauster truck or a suitable method that is going to help the customer. Next. Yeah. So Pit Vidura's goal is we are trying to see if we can use the cost, the operating cost, in order to meet the low income willingness to pay. There is a study that by former founder, Just Club, which assessed the willingness to pay in Kigali, and we found that it was right now the cost of our services is around $80, and sometimes the operation cost varies depending on the we're going to use of the customer and other factors. But what we are trying to see if we can lower the operation cost in order to meet the willingness to pay. Some of the strategies that we are using is to, first of all, we need to find a technology that is going to be suitable for those hard to reach areas or those customers we want to serve. So we also try to increase the demand so that we can be sustainable, profitable as well. And we also try to test a marketing, cost reducing strategies, clustering, so transfer, smart scheduling, and following the other strategies. Another area where we try to improve is the process, how we empty because we know that emptying is, if we use a lot of time emptying one customer, it's going to affect the number of customers we serve by the end of the day. Process and make them efficient and minimize the resource wastage. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, so Pit Vidura has a 3 exhauster truck right now. So we started with the ET1, has 10 cubic meter, and after that we bought a bigger truck, a 20 cubic meter, so that it can help serve more customers. Normally the ET2 serves a big institution, hotels, schools, and all the, other people who live in planned settlement. And by increasing the number that we serve who are able to afford our services, we do what we call subsidy. Those who are settlement. And lastly, we recently acquired a smaller truck of 5 cubic meter truck, and this one helps serve customers who live in sort of informal settlement but have narrow roads where the truck can get to. Next. So for customers who are living who are living in area where we can't access, where the truck cannot get, we are using a portable pump called Pit Vac. Pit Vac can be carried and transported in narrow alleys and get to the customer. And then when we get there, we assemble it and pump from the pit into 50 liters barrels. And those 50 liters barrel are then carried to the nearest place where parked a flatbed. The barrels can be loaded on the flatbed and then be carried to the dump site. So the size of the flatbed is around 5 cubic meter, and for maximizing the volume, we always serve 2 customers per day, and each customer we empty 2 cubic meter so that we can 2 from one customer, another 2 from another, and take the flatbed to the dump site when it's full. Next. So we started by renting the flatbed, but when we saw that our customers who we needed our services are increasing, we opted to buy a smaller exhauster truck, as I showed you, a ET3, smaller than 5 cubic meter, then use it as in replacement of the flatbed. So the way that it works, we still use a pit vac to pump from the pit to the barrels. The barrels are then carried manually to where the flatbed, to the exhauster truck can park. Then when it gets there, someone pumps from the barrel, transfer the sludge from the barrels into the exhauster truck tank. And the tank can have 5 cubic meters, so we can still serve more than one customer's daily basis. Next. Yeah, so one of the in-house technology developed was, we called it the DOVAC. So it mainly consisted of having the pit vac pump into a 200-liter barrels. Then the 200-liter barrels was connected by a hose to the exhauster truck. So the exhauster truck can pull from the 200-liter and gets there. But due to the topography of Kigali, this system it's hard to find places where it can work, because most of the time the pit is located down the hill, cannot pump still. So it can be feasible in area where the landscape is flat. So we basically have those 3 methods that we use, and this chart kind of summarizes how we decide which method depending on the elevation and the distance between where the pit is and where the truck can be parked. Next. So as I said before, we try to find strategies to increase the demand. And one of the studies that we did in the past was to check which marketing channel can generate more customers and still not cost us a lot. So we tried many different channels. We invested in the different channels. We trained a sales agent. We equipped them. We paid for radio advertisement and other things. So, and by equipping the sales agent, training them and following them, the sales agent were the main contributing to marketing channel with around 34%. And this study was done over 2 years period. So the sales agent were followed by repeat customer, and customer were referred by other customers that we served. So sort of a mouth-to-mouth marketing. Another channel that we tried was the employee referral, where we give a commission to our employees, pit emptiers, whenever they refer a customer to the company. And since we are using some who were manual emptiers in the past, so they are encouraged to give us the customer that they used to serve for using informal manual method. Now, when they bring them, we give them a commission. So right now, if you look at the cost acquisition per channel, We found that radio and lookers were somehow expensive because we invested a lot of money and the number of customers came from that much. The problem with sales agent, although they were effective, it required a constant follow-up and equipping them. It required a lot of time to invest in the part, not only a financial investment, but also time. The truck was better because you just planned it for one time and then people can see the number and keep calling you. The employee referral was, we didn't invest a lot in it except for giving them the commission. But right now, if you look at to date, the employees referral is one of the main, followed by the repeat customer. It's one of the learnings that we got out from this marketing study we conducted. Next. Yeah. And another strategy we are using in order to reduce, to improve our process is to use one of the exhauster truck as a transfer station. So the smaller truck of 5 cubic meter normally serves a households, and it has 5 cubic meters. And when we serve one customer, instead of taking it to the dump site and come back and serve the second customer, we transfer its content into the 20 cubic meter truck so that it can go to the dump site when it's full. So we are able to do that like 3 or 4 times before the big exhauster truck can go to the dump site. The dump site is located around 19 kilometers from the city center. And when we did this improvement, we noticed that with by clustering, if you are serving 2 customers, instead of driving 82 kilometers, we are now driving 65 kilometers. We reduced it to by 5 liters, and the time also reduced considerably. We saved around 2 hours, which we can use that time to serve another customer. Right now, the exhauster truck can even serve more than 3 customers on a daily basis. Next, please. Yeah, so other research that we are conducting was to try to see if we can help, because carrying the barrel on the shoulder is not really economic. It's kind of difficult and can result in causing injury and other risk. So we are trying to develop some way we can carry the barrel efficiently and without causing much risk. So we've seen in different areas where the barrels need to be carried by 2 people. Here in Kigali, we're carrying it on the shoulder. Some other people use as 2 jerry cans, one in each hand, but they are open, which may result in spillage. But what we were thinking of developing, we called it a pull pack, which was a sort of a backpack where the barrel can be loaded onto and strapped so that the carrier can move it. But this we still have challenge with implementing this pack, but we are working on it as well. So, next. Yeah, so we also tested other solution in order to be able to pump faster and deeper with the pit latrines and other facilities. We tried the trash pump and we combined with the cutter because we wanted to cut the solid trash that were dumped in the facility and then use the trash pump to remove it, but this did not work. We also tried a submersible pump provided by a company called Homer. The good thing of this pump is it has some grinders below, sort of shredder, so it could shred, and we combine it with a pressure washer so that we can liquefy or fluidize the sludge as the submersible pump is. But due to the trash, the pump was not able to work, so it did not go well. We also tried the Galpa version 1 and the recent version 4. Also tried the excavator as well. But right now, the technology that we found more efficient in our work was the pit vac, and we are still using it. Next. Yeah. So this is the end of part 1 of the presentation where we were sharing the how Pit Vidura work and what it does, and I would welcome questions, if any, before we proceed to the next.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Bruce. That was super interesting. I just have one really quick question, which is the use of the exhauster truck as a transfer station. Because we have had some discussions about that. I think we decided that it was too risky because of the potential mess, because of the kind of response you might get from the population, which might then lead to more negative perceptions about the service in general. I mean, how was it in practice? Like, was it nasty and messy, or was it actually just quite fine?
Yeah. So, well, so far we have had few incidents, and some of them were caused by the not following like the steps, because when we are connecting the smaller truck to the bigger one, so we use the vacuum pump on the bigger one to suck everything from the smaller one, and sometimes the the operator who's doing it tries to use the smaller truck pump. He can push and then cause like the connection to disconnect, but we haven't had a major incident. And so far, when we were there for those protocol, we have seen no spillage at all, most of the cases. And yeah, we right now have a place where we normally go to do that service, and we lay taps on the ground so that we avoid spillage. But today we don't have any complaint for the community or anyone about doing the sludge transfers like that. You're muted, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. You've also got one from Faustina in the chat, which is just checking on our one for Omar as well. So I'll let you just read them for a second, and then.
Okay, so to answer Asante's question, so I said we charge $80 empty, and that $80, the maximum we can empty is it's by bundle. If you pay 80, we can empty up to 40 liters or 40 barrels of 50 liters, which is equivalent to cubic meters. And if you want more than 2 cubic meters, then you have to pay another 80. And so our like about the question, how often do we need to empty? So as we have seen, like most of our repeat customers, especially those who have a pit latrines, they come back at least once every 2 or 3 years. They start service again. But for those who have like septic tank, types of sock pit, some of them we do empty for them. I'm talking about the household. We do empty for them once every 2 years or once every year. But for the bigger, for the corporate customer like hotels and most of our repeat customers, some of them even empty once every 3 months or 6 months. So it's more frequent with the big institution than households. So yeah, in Kigali, like all the pit latrines that we face are outlined. So moving to Omar's questions. So he was asking like when we combine a trash pump and the when we combine a trash pump and the cutter. So okay, sometimes it depends on the when it, okay the actually that pump was given by the Kasha, the manufacturer of the pump. He wanted us to test for it to see if it can work. So yeah, the challenge that we faced was that trash are not always the same type. So the cutter sometimes gets stuck with rags and wraps around this and can no longer cut anymore. When you try to pump and a small rag or something goes inside the trash pump, it immediately blocks the blade. After sometimes with the pump, even if it was new, it started breaking down, and that's why we saw that the trash pump was not efficient, especially when the trash are there, especially rags. Yeah. Thank you. So about the question about the sales agent, yeah, they were effective at the beginning, and the way we started by working with them, they had a fixed income of like around 40 USD, and if they reach a certain amount of emptiers, we could add like a bonus or appreciation if they referred many customers. And at the beginning, they were really effective. They were generating, because most of the sales agents come from the same area where they work from. So we could go in one of the sector and find someone who's familiar with like someone who normally construct those toilets, or someone who like commissioner of house, and we ask them if they can be able to refer a full piece, and then we'll give them an incentive. Then yeah, it was working well because they knew the area where they were working from, but we had as the time went by, we had to keep like training them, providing them equipment in flyers, and some of them, because we saw that keep offering them a fixed income, some of them were not performing efficiently as others. So we switched to an incentive, like a referral payment. So bring, we pay you. If a customer will pay you. So for that to keep working, we had to really meet them like regularly, talk to them, push them to get us more customers. It was kind of becoming more intensive and someone to follow up. But if you can find a way to have like those sales agents like who are in that area, offer them like a steady incentive. I think that was like the time when the sales agent were performing well. So as a recommendation, if you want to go with the sales agent, so find those who live in the community, in that be there, and give them like a steady incentives in order to keep them motivated to providing customers.
Great. I know there were some hands that have kind of gone up and down, but I know you have a whole part two. So I don't know if
we can go to
if
the
you want
part
to move
two,
on to part two.
and we can come back and
But I might need to get you back. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. For the questions. All right, so moving to the second section. So this study was conducted by comparing the two service providers offering services in informal settlement of cities, Kigali and Kampala. Kampala is the capital city of Uganda. And in Kampala, we use the company called Sanitation, which has been operating since 2013. So it's experienced in serving low income and settlement as well. Next. So for the Forever Sanitation normally uses a flatbed so as well to serve the hard-to-reach customers, and we call this, they have an improved manual emptying method that we call scooping, and it was developed in 2014 after they tried when they started with the gulper. The Galpa had some challenge because they were not able to empty more than 2 meters, and sometimes when the sludge is thick, they couldn't empty it, so it was not having a good feedback from the customer. So they developed this improved manual emptying, and this method can even empty thicker and go deeper than the Galpa. When we did the assessment, we saw that 68% of the job that Forever Sanitation was doing in that period required the flatbed or the method scooping. Next, please. Yeah, so for those who don't, to explain what they need in order to do the scooping, it's just like local materials. They use a 160-liter barrels. They have a 5-liter jerry can attached to a rope attached to it. So they also have a hook which is used to remove the trash from the pit. Have a long stick that they use to push the jerry can inside when they are filling, and they have a 20-liter jerry can where they pour the sludge and transport it to 100-liter barrels is best. Next. Yeah, so the tasks that are involved in scoping method, at the beginning they use the hook, okay, to remove the trash, as you can see in the first pictures. And when they are done removing the solid waste, they use the long stick and a small jerry can attached to a rope to push it into the pit and then remove. The sludge can then flow into the jerry can, we pull it out, we pour into the 20 liters. Then the 20 liters can be carried manually, you can see in the picture, and poured into the 160-liter barrels. So the 160-liter barrels remains in the truck, the flatbed truck. Next, so yeah, Forever Sanitation also has an exhauster truck, but it was also used to serve like institution and commercial building and other plant settlement areas. They have a 4 cubic meter, a 10 and a 15 cubic meter truck. So we observed that in the jobs that were done during the study period, 32% of the required or needed this truck to be emptying method. Next, please. Yeah. So yeah, to give you more details about the data we collected, we started in June and in September, and we tracked 208 jobs. So the way we did, we had a data collector who shadowed a pit emptying team and had a phone with a tool called Cobot to collect the duration of each task, the method they used, and what resources they needed in order to serve that customer. In Kigali, we collected 109, and in both companies shared like their financial record in order to check like the tariff they charge, the service, the volume they empty, and the method they used in order to empty. Next, please. And with those data that we collected, and after analyzing them, we made like 3 main findings. The first one was that it's hard to serve hard to reach customers. So we noticed that with scooping and using the pit vac, the flow rate was around scooping takes 1 hour to pump 0.4 cubic meter with the scooping. And with the pit vac method, whether with the flatbed or the exhauster truck, it takes 1 hour to pump between 0.3 and 0.6 cubic meters. But one thing we also notice is that scooping, the activity of scooping is time intensive, but if you look at the general duration of the emptying task, somehow similar to the using the pit vac, but because in Kampala they had a lot of trash in their pit, their method was time intensive compared to the other hard to serve customers. Without accounting the trash fishing, the scooping method and the pit vac are somehow similar. Another thing there is that scooping, setting it up is pretty easy. It's pretty simple, it's straightforward. You just bring the tools and then you start. But with the pit vac, you have to assemble the pumps, and it kind of takes longer. And then at the end, you also have to clean. So the pumping is shorter, but the other tasks are kind of time consuming. So another thing we observed with this, with the data we collected, was that in Kampala they removed around 0.57 cubic meter of solid waste that were disposed in trains. But in Kigali, we saw that they remove around, Pit Vidura removes 0.16 cubic meter solid waste. Next. Next. Yeah. And looking at the tariff that each company charges. So first, like to share more details on how Forever Sanitation charges $8 for 1 barrel of 160 liters. As I said earlier, Pit Vidura charges around $81 for 40 barrels, 50 liters. If you want more, you pay double. If you want triple, you pay 3 times the price. So with this price, this tariff structure, so we saw that Forever Sanitation is charging a low minimum tariff, which allows them to serve more customers with a smaller volume. And we saw that before we go there, that's so for small volumes, if you charge with the Forever Sanitation method, Forever Sanitation was charging less, but if you go between 1.6 and 2 cubic meter, their tariff model becomes expensive than Pit Vidura's. And when you look at how the distribution of the jobs of the customer emptied volume, and we saw that with the Forever Sanitation is that 85% of their customers were emptying less than 1.6 cubic meters, while Pit Vidura was emptied 70% of Pit Vidura's customers emptied between 1.6 and 2.1 cubic meter. So one thing I can say here is that having a low minimum tariff like the one for Forever Sanitation allows customers to start to it's more inclusive than and wants to empty maybe less than it doesn't have enough money to pay for it, he can empty as much so that he can keep using their facility. But with the high minimum tariff that Pit Vidura uses, a lot of customers are left out. For example, those who have shallow pits, they cannot empty because we are not going to remove 2 cubic meters, so they are kind of discouraged to test our services. The others customer who have like latrines which have like very thick, so they are not going to be encouraged to empty because they know that we are not going to remove everything. And those customers who normally don't have like 80,000 in one installment, so they cannot ask our services. So with those kind of customer are kind of left out. We use like the high minimum tariff. Next. Next, please. Okay. Right. So the third finding that we saw is that those had to serve methods to empty hard to reach areas. They require a labor demand that is kind of high compared to mechanized method. In Kampala, we saw that they use one driver and 2 emptiers when they are using the scooping. But in Kigali, we use around 6, one driver, one operator of the pit vac, and who carries the barrel between the latrine and where the truck is parked. So when we look at the volume that is emptied on a daily basis and divide by the number of the people by the labor, so we saw that in Kampala, one person lives on average per day 1,100 kilograms per day. But in Kigali, they lift 720 kilogram on a daily basis. But also in Kigali, we know that our topography is kind of challenging compared to Kampala. That's one of the reasons also we still have we use less. And in the average number of the jobs that we do on a day in Kigali, we do 2 jobs. When we set this method, we do 2 jobs. But when we do with the Forever Sanitation, on average, they do 1 job and sometimes 2. Next, please. So yeah, those findings led us to come up with some recommendation or conclusion from what we observed and tested from the both companies. So we noticed that there is a large spectrum of emptying technology from manual to mechanized, but mechanized methods are not always efficient in hard to reach area. So there is a necessity for mix between a manual and regulators should try to see if they can acknowledge or help like service provider use hygienic method rather than focusing on a mechanical part. For example, in Kigali, it's not allowed to do the scoping. So if you want to provide the services, you have to at least have a mechanized emptying method. And we know that with the mechanized, we have like a certain customer that we are not able to serve. And another finding and recommendation, something we learned is that, okay, as Pit Vidura also wants to grow or any other company wants to expand and serve more customers, there is a need to assess or make sure that you are not exceeding the manual handling laws for MTS if you don't want to exhaust them or cause some risk. So there is a need to establish the limits that manual MTS need to carry their safety and health. Another thing, so in Kigali and Kampala, we have 2 different solid waste collection systems. Some research have studied the comparison between the 2. And we saw that because in Kigali, we have around 80% of solid waste collection system. Kampala, it's around 50%. And an improved solid waste collection system really affects the trash disposal in latrines, and we're able to find it out by comparing between 2 cities. And lastly, we saw that, yeah, although the minimum tariff are inclusive, later of the study, those other charges like dumping fee, the labor you have to pay in transportation and other things, if you empty one barrels per customer, you are not going to be sustainable. So there is also a minimum to set, there is a need to set a minimum and sustainable. Thank you. I think that's the end of the presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've only got 4 minutes left. No. Thank you. No, it's because you've had so many questions, which is great. So there's 2 questions in the chat. One of them is asking you to expand a bit more on the solid waste side of it. Like, is it because they have different systems? Is it the regulation? Is it behaviour? So just wouldn't you mind like kind of expanding a bit on the differences in solid waste management between the 2 locations?
Yeah, so I think it's mainly because like if you have solid waste in your compound and you're not collected, you would definitely find a way to get rid of it. And in Kigali, it's like a scheduled, like we have a scheduled system of collecting every month. There is each household they have to pay a certain amount depending on the financial status of the income status of that household. They have to pay a minimum at least 2,000 for the poor, and then for the very poor, the service is free, but for the middle, it's 2,000, and for the high income, it's 5,000. There is that every customer has to pay that. Every household has to pay it every month. Then the truck always comes every week to collect the solid waste. So it's kind of a strategy, and it's set, and it always happens. It's people are used to it. So, but in Kampala, in areas that we assessed, like we could see that some people have they don't have like a way to a solid waste collection system in their area. So I think that's one of the reasons why they are pushed to dump it in the solid in the pit latrines. But I also agree that there's also, because in Kigali also we also have like trash, and sometimes we find that those trash are mainly bags or some other sanitary things that people are not comfortable disposing with the solid waste. Yeah, there's also that part of education that needs to be in order to improve it completely. But solid waste can really have a great impact.
Thank you so much. Now we don't have any hands up, but there's one last question in the chat, and I think we'll probably have to take this as the final question. So the question is, it's basically around your overall financing model. Like, so is Pit Vidura financially sustainable as an organization? Are you reliant on kind of international funders to support you, or are you able to run independently?
A very good question. Yeah, so the part, okay, Pit Vidura has like two parts. Like we have a part of operation and we have the part of R&D. But now, up to date now, we are able to be financially sustainable on the operation. But to keep doing this research and we rely on us to continue the research.
Great, thank you very much. And so we've got one last question. I said that was the last one, but Habib, you've got your hand up. So please, you're the last one.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, sorry, so I couldn't get the time. So my question is, I saw your presentation. Thank you for your good presentation. So in Kampala, I saw that there was two type of, the service provision. So this for low-income communities, a kind of manual type, using the Galpar or something like that. They are providing service in that way. But for commercial or in plant settlement, you mentioned that they are using different size of vacuum tankers or something like that to provide the emptying and transportation service. So my question is, do they have any financial analysis, to compare the cost of the service, say cost of the service for manual emptying in low income communities and the cost of service in commercial or the plant settlement using modern technologies like vacuum tanker or something like that, and whether in low-income communities is affordable for low-income communities or not. That kind of analysis do they have? Thank you.
I can let Jonathan answer that question. I think it aligns with what he's working on.
Sorry, Bruce, I was just concentrating hard on answering the questions in the chat, so I was not really listening. But I think the short answer to Habib's question is that's what we will be doing in the next few months. Is that fair?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Great, so we'll need to get you back, Bruce and John, to give us an update. So we're just over time, so we're going to have to let everyone go. But thank you so much. Really, really, really interesting presentation. I'm sorry we had a rocky start, but really fascinating. So thanks so much for joining. Open invite to come back in a few months. And for everyone else, thanks so much for joining the webinar this morning. The next one is on the 24th of May, which is going to be the final one in this kind of research mini-series, and it's going to be a research, finally a PhD student, Gemma Phillips, who's looking at fecal flows into cities, and modelling that using cactus and chip flow diagrams. So looking forward to that. And thanks so much, Bruce and John. Hope to speak soon. Cheers.
Thanks for inviting us, Claire. Cheers.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.